Back, everyone, to cold case number 24, Lisa Holstead, from August 12th, 1986. This case, the name of the individual who did this. Thank you for joining me today. He wasn't on anybody's radar. Police arrest Green Bay's oldest cold case murder suspect. Green Bay, Wisconsin. Green Bay police have made an arrest in the city's oldest cold case murder investigation. Lisa Holstead was found dead in August of 1986. She was 22 years old at the time. Investigators say Lisa had been murdered. On Thursday, police announced the arrest of Lou Archer Griffin, 65, on the charge of first-degree intentional homicide. He is being held in the Brown County Jail. Recent developments in the case and physical evidence were used by the investigation to link Griffin to this homicide, police said. We do not know the possible motive at this time. We may never know what the actual motive was. Green Bay Police said Chief Andrew Smith said there's no known connection between Griffin and Holstead. It completely baffled us for a lot of years. They didn't run in the same social circles. They didn't even live in the same county, city, nothing. I don't know of any connection at all. It wasn't dating. It wasn't an acquaintance. Nothing. It was so out there. Normally, a murder like this happens within some kind of connection. But as far as we know, at this time, there is no connection. There never was a connection. On August 12th, 1986, Lisa Holstead left the family gathering with her boyfriend. Witnesses say that they saw Lisa get out of her boyfriend's car in the area of Mason and Taylor Street at about 2:30 a.m. Lisa's body was located in a marshy area, which is now known as the Ken Ewers Natural Wildlife Park area. She had been strangled, as far as the police would say. At the time, they didn't want to admit to anything else. At the time, police were hesitant to say that Holstead was sexually assaulted before her death. But at today's hearing, we learned that the DNA from which led investigators to Griffin came from a rape kit. He wasn't on anybody's radar in 1986 when this homicide occurred, said Chief of Police Mr. Smith. Police investigated the murder of Lisa Holstead in 1986, but were completely baffled. Her murder went unsolved for 34 years. Investigators are still mum on exactly how Griffin was developed as a suspect recently, but they say once they had discovered he lived within a few miles of the area at one point with an ex-girlfriend, everything started to click. Smith says Detective Graff worked the case for years and uncovered evidence leading to the arrest of Griffin on October 28th. Police traced Griffin's current address to Racine, where last month a Racine County drug unit officer conducted surveillance on Griffin, spotting him smoking and drinking beer outside of the halfway home that he lived in. The complaint says he watched Griffin throw away beer cans into a dumpster and a cigarette butt, then throw it onto another one onto the ground. The drug court unit officer packaged up the cigarette that he had thrown on the ground, the beer cans from the dumpster, along with the other cigarette butt into the dumpster. 3 weeks ago, the crime lab analysis matched DNA from Griffin's cigarette and beer cans to the DNA found on Holstead's body. Griffin was arrested outside the Racine halfway home without incident. Prosecutors say Griffin denies killing Holstead, but he admitted to being high on cocaine and drinking alcohol that particular night, and was familiar with the area and having driven near it after work. Prosecutors say Griffin eventually told them that he might have had sex with Holstead, but he can't remember that whore. Remembering seeing something about it on the news, referring to her again as a whore. This was one of those cases where people would always bring it up, wondering what had happened. They would pull out books, they would call psychics, they would have specials on the local news, but nothing ever came of it. The police re interviewed witnesses over and over again. People were interrogated, evidence was reviewed. Every part of this case, even the cold case squad, had looked at it over and over again over the last 34 years. But nothing came of anything. No new witnesses, no nothing. The police are keeping a pretty much mum of how they finally were able to connect Mr. Griffin to this crime. Unit Detective Graff was unable to put everything together and make some real progress on it. It was just one of those cases that was nagging us. He wanted this case to be closed, says Mr. Smith. Detective Graff worked in conjunction with the FBI, the State of Wisconsin Division of Criminal Investigation, the Racine County Sheriff's Department, and other local and federal agencies until finally the pieces came together. They finally were able to zero in on Mr. Griffin. Because of reverse genealogical matchups, once they put the DNA into the system, they looked backwards. The genealogy said that they needed to narrow it down to an adult male of African American descent who was approximately a certain height, a certain build, and it also narrowed down a list of possible suspects who were in the system already for violent crimes against women. Little did we know that it would lead us to one individual, an individual who had just gotten out of prison 1 month prior to the murder of Lisa Holstead. Griffin doesn't have a criminal history since being released from prison, besides a couple of misdemeanors. He served time in cases of disorderly conduct with a dangerous weapon and battery, but it was minor battery. Detective Graff went on to say that finally, after all these years, the family has closure. Lisa Holstead may now rest in peace. Her family, her child, now has some peace. Yes, Lisa Holstead was a single mother at the time she was murdered. Rest in peace, Lisa.